vegetarian.
I can tell.
Oh, thanks for the water.
Yeah, no problem. It's always nice to have a little bit to soothe the throat when you're speaking your stories and everything. But I must say I'm so excited about like just you taking the time and you as well, Lauren, because it's a dream come true actually. Just being here in itself is I find quite incredible. But then to have the opportunity to sit down with yourself and Lauren and talk about the kind of the Fluent in 3 months team that you are now, I think, because when I talk to you downstairs and everything, it's not when Benny's doing this or when Benny's doing that. It's literally we are doing it, and I find that really incredible that you can have that.
Just saying that before.
Yeah.
That where are we? Not an I.
Exactly, and you got that working relationship, and I guess the first kind of we already talked about, Benny, that you've been interviewed by everyone and everywhere. And therefore that we thought it would be interesting to talk about Lauren's kind of development and your role as a teacher. But I guess we should probably go back to when you met and sort of just like how did you when you met on the holiday, and I guess it must have been one of the first talks is like, what are you doing here? And then you came into the language things, but how did you guys actually meet? 'Cause I don't think I've seen it.
Well, she was on.
Are we being recorded right now?
Maybe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I was 1 year into a PhD program, and before that, I had finished a 2-year master's program.
You recorded from two angles.
And is this recording?
No, that's your camera.
This
that's
is
your
visual
camera.
recording as well.
Yeah, I'm not gonna use the video without your consent, of course. But then I'll have the video, and we can always make something out of it. Maybe you'll use it for something. It's good to just do it.
Yeah. So she was on vacation, and I had just finished writing the book.
Yeah.
And so I could finally take time off, and that's how we managed to spend a few days together.
Yeah. So
And we really connected, and I decided to visit her in America. And then after that, I said, I want you to travel the world with me, or I want you to live with me in Valencia.
So
It's very poetic.
we met. It was very romantic. We met in Berlin because he had the time off, and I was doing a Euro trip.
Right.
And Berlin was the third city in my stop.
Oh,
And
right.
do you know Internations?
Yeah.
So we both attended a party at Internations,
Wow.
and then that night a bunch of people went swing dancing, and Benny and I went swing dancing together, and it was very fun.
Nice.
And then when I left Berlin, he sent me a message saying he really liked me and wanted to visit me in America. So we actually didn't see each other for 2 months, and then we spent 7 days together in America, and then I moved to Spain with him. So it was
That's incredible.
very fast.
What were you thinking when he was saying like, yeah, I just kind of travel the world and writing a book, and what did you think about it at that time?
Well, I don't know. I guess it was very different from anything that I had ever. One of the first things that him and I talked about was culture shock.
Right.
Because I was experiencing culture shock being in Europe for the first time, and I was noticing I was doing a lot of things that people kept giving me weird looks for that I didn't know what I was doing weird things. So, I asked him a lot. I kind of grilled him, and I was like, okay, so why when I'm in restaurants do they never come to the table? And he said, well, in Europe you have to call them over.
Right.
And this is not something that an American just knows. So just all these little things. And
So you showed her the post, what is it? Things that annoy me about America or something.
She actually, even though we met for the first time in Berlin, she had heard of me via that post.
I had read that
really?
post years before because I was Googling whether or not I could take my dog with me to Europe.
To Europe? Wow.
Yes, and the answer to that question is no, you
Right,
can't. But I had stumbled across his friend's blog, Nomadic Matt,
Right, yeah.
when I was searching for that information. And then I just saw one link to a post written by Benny, but I didn't know who he was or anything. That I read the post and I just thought, oh, that's interesting, weird.
But, wow, that is really
And then
weird.
later on, I met him and he told me about the post, and I was like, oh my gosh, I read that years
Wow.
ago. So yeah.
Must have been fate, surely.
Yeah.
But that's probably one of your most popular posts of all time, I assume.
No, it isn't.
Oh, really?
That's maybe 4th most popular.
It's definitely the one that got the most angry Americans to.
It's actually a mixture of the two. It's got a lot of comments, but it's got both
Sure.
People who agree, people who disagree.
Yeah.
But I don't really consider that post a kind of any big point on the blog. Like, my most highly trafficked post is the 29 life lessons.
Right.
That one has been viewed like 3 or 4 million times. You know,
Kind of the condensed version of everything you've learned the last 10 years.
Exactly. So and then there's some of the language posts as well. So that for me, because I see the blog as a chance to encourage people. So that kind of rant about America, I don't really think of that very much. Right. You know.
No, I see.
And he obviously doesn't hate America.
No.
As evidenced by what you can see in front of you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think Americans thought it that way. I just assume that when you kind of hear a foreigner speaking about your country, you kind of get a little bit proud, and that's probably why some people were. But yeah, it's not relevant at all. But it's funny that you read it and then you met. I mean, it does sound like kind of a love story.
There were some things in the post that I thought were true. Like, of course, you don't like someone pointing out but we do smile a lot. Yeah. Especially me. I think I'm the worst of the smilers. When I don't know what else to do, if I'm feeling uncomfortable, I just smile like an extra lot.
You see, I feel uncomfortable when I smile a lot. Because to me, it's like, it's like it's a little bit of fake. Obviously, I am truly happy sometimes, but then I smile. But just generally as a courtesy, that it's a very weak smile if it's there. Mm-hmm. So fast forward, Benny's recruiting you to his lifestyle, so to speak. And of course you accept and you go with him. So when did you consider for the first time that, okay, Benny knows 10, 12 languages, that you were going to learn languages as well? Because I assume you were thinking that in the beginning, maybe.
No, actually it was the opposite. I was stubbornly indignant about not learning languages because when him and I first started dating, I would meet friends of his, or one of the first... When we moved to Spain, he took me to Paris, and there was a polyglot event, and people kept coming up to me and saying, "Oh, you're Benny's girlfriend. How many languages do you speak?"
Right.
And I was like, "Only English." And people would be like, "Why?" And I just was sort of like, I don't need to be a polyglot just because I'm dating a polyglot. So at first I was sort of stubborn about it.
The interests we share and the things we talk about, we have many, many things in common. But language learning it was never a topic of conversation. Right. And I told her from the start that I did not need to convert her into a polyglot. I didn't need to make this about a language learning thing. Right. Yeah. That I liked her for the person she was. So I didn't care if she decided she wanted to learn a language or not. Right.
But
it's unfortunate first experience though, and I can see why that would maybe turn you to the opposite direction if people were like, "Oh, really? You only speak English?"
Well, we went to the polyglot club in Paris. Right. So it's kind of when you're
there were lots of nice people there.
There were very nice people, but when you're in that environment, everyone just kind of presumes everyone else speaks, at least 5 languages or something. Yeah. So and then unfortunately, to make things worse, she had a little bit of a cough, and we got you cough medicine.
Yeah, I drugged myself.
And unfortunately, it was very tasty. So she had like a few cups. And it kind of put her out.
It had a sedative effect to it that we were not aware of. So I literally was drugged and attempting to maintain these conversations about languages, but with someone who was not.
Yeah. Really. However, this year.
So the reason I'm learning Esperanto is kind of twofold. One is Benny really loves Esperanto, and he's always sort of said like, oh, when you could learn Esperanto really fast if you ever wanted to learn a language. And I want to learn a language, which I won't say which one. Sure. But I would like to learn a language that I was interested in before I met Benny, and I had actually started right before I met him. I started studying it very briefly, but then I met him and got distracted. And so I was telling him I really want to learn this language, and he said, "Okay, why don't you learn Esperanto first?" Right. And then Judith Meyer's 6-week challenge came up, and Benny was like, "This would be a great time for you to start," and that's why. And so I there's a language I really want to learn, and so I think now I'm gonna get into language learning because I really enjoyed learning Esperanto. It was really fun. Right. And the people the community has been really supportive, and that helps a lot. It makes me feel motivated to keep moving forward, and I have a great coach.
Right. probably the best.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what do you guys think of the event so far? We're here in Polyglot Gathering in Berlin, the first time it's being held, and you of course know everyone who's hosting it. I mean, we've talked to them online, and now they're pulling this together. What do you think of the event?
I think it's great because like my basis of comparison is the Polyglot conference, which was amazing because that was the first time ever that so many of us had come together to meet in person. It was the first time I met Richard and Luca and many people.
Yeah.
But it was very intense because it was 2 days.
That, yeah.
And it was unfortunately by the time it was over, there were still so many people I wanted to talk to, but we were all going home.
Right.
So what I really like what Judith's done is she's taken that amazing concept that Richard initially had, and she's mixed it a bit with the Esperanto mindset because everything about this conference that a lot of people are not aware of is it feels very much like an Esperanto event. Which tend to be actually a week long. So this is the 5 days long. But everything about it, like having the board on the wall and the various
tea
Esperanto
room and
tea
alligator
rooms.
room. And
Yeah. All of those things and the format and the fact there's just different talks at the same time.
Right.
So I really like that they've taken that concept and combined it with the polyglot community. And it's great that we've either attended the talks or we've just been hanging out and chatting to people.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's been my favorite part is that everyone has been extremely social and in coming up to us, and I'm having the opposite experience here that I had at the Paris event.
Yeah.
Is here nobody has asked me, maybe it's because I have a name tag,
yeah.
but nobody's asked me how many languages do you speak. Everyone's just really nice and wanting to talk to me to get to know me, and
one reason for that, as well as everyone being really nice, is that people recognize her.
Yeah, that's
of course,
right.
yeah.
So there was one time
how does that feel?
Yeah, one time she was like
super encouraging,
saying to people, "Oh, I'm from Baltimore," and they're like, "Yeah, I know that."
Of course. We read the
That's
Wikipedia page.
It is weird because I want to normally when you start a social interaction, where are you from? What are you doing?
Of course.
Here? And I can't say any of those things because everyone already knows.
Yeah.
But it's
But it took you a little while. I remember reading the blog and it was like me and my girlfriend were doing things. It was never me and Lauren. You weren't really introduced early on. So what made you, I guess, decide to say yes to a public thing? Because that's very different than being like just the girlfriend.
Yeah, at first we had decided that I was not. I was going to be kept private. But then what happened was the book tour started. And we've been to a lot of cities and met a lot of readers, and they all meet me.
Right.
And, it's gotten to the point where I've met several hundred of his fans face to face already.
Right.
So I was thinking, I kind of already met so many people. Yeah. They know what I look like. They know who I am.
Right.
And then we just thought that it would be really great for the blog for people to see Benny's methods being put to use on someone who's learning a language for the first time, and that's something he can't do.
Of course,
obviously. And so many people will see him saying, Benny, you're just really good at it, but I'm not. So this is a great opportunity for helping people, and we got so many emails from people saying, thank you, I had just given up learning Spanish and now I'm starting it up again, and so I'm really happy with the decision to become part of the blog. Yeah,
I love the videos that you put out, and I told Benny earlier that I think it's the best that he's probably produced for the site overall, because it's just a different kind of, I mean, there are tons of great videos that has good like practical content, but in terms of actually kind of documenting the process, I think that's the best you've done so far.
Yeah, because one thing we did differently is in all my other videos, when I'm uploading my progress, I decide, okay, this is the progress video, press record, do what I need to do for 20 minutes or an hour, and then press stop.
Right.
With Lauren, though, we actually, every single second that she was learning Esperanto, we had the camera on. So
how does that feel, Lauren?
It was actually my idea.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Because I was thinking no one has ever made a video, recorded the entire process of someone learning a language before. And for a very long time, we were very strict about it. Like, we wouldn't even practice with each other. And then we started slipping up because people would come up to me at book signings when
and
we
speak
didn't.
Esperanto.
Yeah, and we didn't have the camera, so we weren't able to record those parts. But every time I studied in the house, we had the camera rolling.
Right.
And I really wanted to people to see. I didn't want us to forget any of the moments that I experienced as a beginner. I wanted us to be able to show them to the readers, and it ended up being great. Sucks for Benny because he has to go through hours and hours of footage.
Yeah,
every
like
week.
every week I had to edit 8 hours or 10 hours down to 5 or 10 minutes, which is a lot of work.
But people appreciate it.
But it's rewarding in the end, I think.
Yeah.
And also, like, the funny thing I found was that those moments of, I don't want to do this anymore. There weren't that many of them, but you said there was a lot of, like, outtakes in the, that you left out. And I told Lauren that a good idea would be an outtake reel.
I think we should do that.
I think you should totally do that.
There are lots of moments of me.
But can you explain, like, the emotion that you're going through? Because obviously, for me, growing up in Denmark, foreign languages is that's part and parcel of growing up. I mean, my English is a second language, so it's that's just how we grow up. It comes naturally. So for us, the idea of learning another language, we kind of know how it feels. Can you try and share that feeling of what's the frustration? Is it something specific to a case, or is it a vocabulary problem, or is it lack of development? What is it?
When I first started, at like hour 1, looking at Learnu Go, the first thing that hit me was how completely inept that you feel when you start learning a new language, because there is this massive amount of stuff in between where you are now and where you want to be.
Right.
And every single thing you see, you don't understand. And I think in life that there are very few other things that feel like that, where every single new word is a challenge, it's a struggle, and it makes you feel very inept.
Right.
And so one thing that I wanted to stress to the readers who experience that is that everyone learning a new language feels that way, and that you just have to keep going. And even if it doesn't feel like you're progressing, that's one thing I learned, is that I didn't feel like I was progressing at times, and then a few days later I would realize that I had to move forward even though I didn't feel like that. So that's what I remember first, is feeling really dumb. And then the second thing I remember is being afraid for Benny to hear me speaking. And one of the things I always hear him telling people the importance of overcoming their fear and speaking and speaking and speaking.
Yeah.
And it's actually really hard to do that.
It is. It's scary.
It was hard for me, really hard for me, even with just him. And he's my
I think that's worse. I think it's totally worse to talk to your partner or really close friends in another language than it is to talk to somebody you just met in a bookshop or something. Because you're very close, and it's like you kind of want to do good. But if you don't have any kind of relationship, it's like, oh yeah, I'll just try it, whatever. So for me, it's harder to speak to friends than it is to, like, say, random tutors or people I don't know. So I can definitely relate to that.
But then another thing I noticed, and that I'm going to remember from here on out, is that my first hour, Benny was in the room. He's always in the room because we travel in short-term accommodation. And I was, like, trying to, like, pronounce the words quietly so he couldn't hear me. And I got over that within like an hour. And now when I study, I have no shame. I'll, butcher the language and speak. So that's one thing that I get from the videos we wanted to stress to the readers, is that feeling of being uncomfortable, of speaking in front of people, once you just do it, you won't feel uncomfortable anymore. I don't know, I don't know what happens when you do your second language, if you experience it all over again. But for your first, you do?
Yeah.
So just get past
I get it in every language. Like in my German, I've had German for 10 years. I mean, ordering a coffee when I arrived in Berlin was like, and then trying to speak some Russian that I've learned a few months is, it's the same feeling. I totally relate to it. But Benny, in the videos, you were presenting it as, it was Lauren's gig. It was Lauren doing the work. It was her showing how she could do it. But how do you avoid being a language teacher and sort of just stay as an enabler?
Yeah, because I have my own preferences and I have my style, which I tell people there is no one way to learn a language. And I was afraid that I could potentially put Lauren off Esperanto and language learning in general if I forced her to learn the way that I would want myself to learn. And this is a problem I've had with language teachers, is that they teach the language the way they want to be taught. And that's not the way you help people. I think the best language teachers should be language facilitators. They help the person get exposure and they give them encouragement, and they answer the questions they have, but in a way that I really try to avoid teaching her. So whenever she asked me, like Lauren would ask me, Benny, what's the word for book in Esperanto? And I would not.
I remember that. Yeah.
I would not translate it for her.
Yeah.
I would try to help her figure it out herself. So I'd say, well, what's the name of the place where we store books in English?
Right.
And she was like, libro.
Right.
Yeah.
You know. So I think that's better, because otherwise she would rely in that situation. She would just rely on me all the time.
Right.
You know, she would just keep turning to me and saying, Benny, what's Esperanto for this, for this, for this? But I feel, and I'm really happy when I see her, that she does not, while we're talking here, even after just a few weeks, she's not constantly turning to me.
Right.
And because the problem there is, if I happen to be in another room, then she just can't speak the language, you know?
Yeah.
But she has been completely independent. She's been able to talk to the other person, talk around the words, stop and think for a second and figure out, rather than always going via English. And she found a style that worked for her. So I gave her examples of tools that I would recommend, and she gravitated towards the ones that worked for her learning style.
Yeah, and one thing that I learned quickly about myself as a learner is that, well, two things. One, I'm very impatient, so I can't do the same exercise for very long.
Right.
I have to switch between different kind of courses, or memorize, or Anki, or something. And then another thing is that I do not like grammatical explanations of things. I need to see examples.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the accusative in Esperanto, someone can explain it eloquently and beautifully, and it means nothing to me.
Right.
Whereas seeing the examples, so you learn about yourself as a learner when you sort of.
But again, isn't it? Is that why your relationship as a kind of of course a love relationship, but also a professional in terms of language tutor or enabler and student? Is that why it works so well? Because you're not really teaching; you're more like just a support, or kind of an enabler or facilitator, like you called it. Because Richard was talking about in his talk, he was saying that learning a language with a spouse or from a spouse is very stressful. But it sounds like you don't have that kind of...
Something to consider is, in that situation, you're talking about learning the native language of the spouse, and that's a very different problem. So, like, if, for instance, Lauren was from another country and she didn't speak English and she decided she wanted to learn English with me, our relationship may be in one language.
Right.
And what Richard means, and what I've come across myself, is that one partner learning another partner's language is very hard, because the relationship is in a particular language.
Of course, yeah.
Now, we got around that, even like our relationship is in English, but we had our Esperanto hour.
Right.
Which we didn't start until like the third or fourth week, because she was still getting into learning.
Sure.
But then we would just around lunchtime, we would switch into Esperanto.
Great.
And stick in Esperanto until the hour was up. And if there's anyone in a couple, they can make that decision. The catch is, if it would put a major strain on the relationship if we decided we were going cold turkey 100%.
Oh, right, yes.
That would be a mess.
That would be an absolute mess.
Right.
And that's the problem, that a lot of couples may think of doing that, because it feels okay, it looks good on paper. You think, okay, best way to learn language is 100% in that language. And in many circumstances, I agree, 100% immersion is the answer.
Yeah.
But you have to take into consideration that there are relationships in human beings, and the need, especially in a romantic couple, there's a certain need to communicate to a very deep level, which you can reach. You can reach that level in the other language, but you are putting the relationship under a certain strain. And this is why I think you can ease yourself in. So Esperanto hour, we could have transitioned our relationship to only Esperanto if we did it like 2 hours and 3 hours and so on.
Sure. But then would you want to, that you need kind of, I think you need an extra motivation.
But it's really hard because the relationship that the language began in, and this is a problem I had when I was in Spain, that for 6 months, all of my friends were English speakers. And it was just, there's this unspoken rule, we speak in English. And it was a tough choice, but I had to end friendships and begin new ones. When I made the choice, I'm switching to 100% Spanish, because then I would meet new people and I would just start fresh in Spanish with them.
Right. So Lauren, what kind of, if you could summarize some of the big lessons you've learned from this, I mean, you're not done with Esperanto, I assume, but some of the big kind of aha moments that you've learned by studying it on yourself.
Okay, so I would say the first one is that I was extremely terrified before I had my first spoken session with someone who wasn't Benny.
Right.
For whatever reason, I feel very comfortable talking to Benny. But when I had a Skype conversation with another Esperantist, I would have probably not done it if I hadn't had Benny there as my sponsor.
Yeah.
And
what she means is I tied her down to the chair and said,
cold.
I don't care what excuse you're coming up with, we are doing this video.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And after like 2 minutes of it, it just all went away. I wasn't nervous anymore.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I feel like so many people don't, like I said earlier about how in the beginning when you first start making the sounds of the words, you feel so self-conscious. And what I learned is that all of these negative feelings are temporary.
Of course.
So, that being self-conscious about your speaking, if you just push past that, you won't feel that way anymore.
Right.
And if you just push past the fear of talking to someone who's a native speaker or a high-level speaker, then you won't feel that way anymore. But I feel like so many people don't pass through the wall. And this is such a shame because if they just did, then, it's just such a great feeling.
And it makes it easier for you when you come and see people here, for instance, face to face, because you've already had that, you already took the plunge or the jump or whatever you might call it. So when you get here in person, I assume that you feel slightly easier. It's still scary, I would say.
It's still scary.
For me, at least.
Just not as terrifying as it was initially.
But I think I posted this on the website as well. I think you did extremely well in the video. I mean, I speak no Esperanto, but just the fact that you didn't look like you were scared to death in the beginning even.
No, I was very comfortable. People keep saying to me, "Oh, so many people saw this video, weren't you scared?" And no, because I felt like I was just in my living room talking to Benny.
Yeah,
right.
It's the reality of it is actually hitting me here now that I'm seeing so many people who have seen the videos.
Right.
But at the time, I felt very, very comfortable. But the first time you do anything, it's always scary. So it's still difficult talking to people here, and especially because here there's so many different accents that I've never come across before, and people are talking much faster than I've been used to, and Benny's always been very kind to speak slowly with me. So, but those are all things you have to get used to. There's not one brick wall, there's many. And you have to just keep going past each one.
Right. Yeah, that's good. Do you have any, you moving on to maybe to a natural language, do you have any kind of specific maybe grammar things or anything you'd like to take with you from Esperanto that you think you could use later?
I
don't think it's the grammar of Esperanto. It's more
grammar.
It's more just
oriented.
the comfort and the confidence that you can do it, because I think it's like she said, the nerves are the biggest problem in language learning. And now this whole idea of Esperanto as a springboard, there are many theories for why that might work, and one I think is confidence.
Yeah.
Because if she was starting a natural language that was very complex, from the start, she would just keep saying, "Oh, I'm too dumb, I'm too dumb, I'm too dumb." But the fact that you've done this already shows that you've got momentum, and so you've already done something successfully. You've proven it to yourself.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest thing I learned from Esperanto is how to learn a language.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now I know how to learn a language, so taking on a much more complicated language is a lot less of a fearsome task.
Right. So the next step, is that going to be more you, or are you still going to look to Benny for support, or are you slowly going to become totally
Well, I'll give
independent.
you a hint about my language that I'm learning. Benny does not speak this language.
Wow. There you go.
So he's not going to be able to give me that much help. Although he does, the blog is a big network, so we'll be able to use the blog. But anybody could really use the blog in order to find connections and resources. So I'll use the blog and the forums and the people that we know to help to get suggestions as to the resources I should be using and that kind of thing. But Benny doesn't speak this language, so he won't be able to help me too much.
Is that part of your considerations at all, or was it just a little thing that?
I joke that I'm gonna learn all the languages he doesn't speak, so that between the two of us we'll have covered more ground. But no, I began learning this language before I met him, very, very, very briefly, for career purposes.
Right.
But in the short period of time I was studying it, I enjoyed it a lot.
Right.
I found it to be a very interesting language, beautiful language, and I really want to continue it. Even though we have no plans to travel to that country anytime soon, I just want to finish what I started.
But I think that's okay too, because a lot of people base their language choices on going there. So for you, it could also be interesting for anyone really to study a language without that end goal, a different end goal maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But we definitely be looking out for, I guess, a post about my next challenge or something.
It'll
a
be
video
coming
blog.
soon.
Yeah.
It's actually me and another team member of the site. His name is Brandon.
Yeah.
He's going to be learning a new language as well. We're going to do it together.
Oh, great. That's just going to be, and Benny's going to be, what are you going to do, Benny, when Lauren is running the...
I'm going to be lying in the hammock, drinking my mocktail, enjoying life. No, because we're on a book tour, and that's going to keep me very busy. And it's going to keep Lauren very busy as well, so it'll be like a half-time project.
Yeah, my goal is, it's going to be a 3-month challenge.
Right.
But Benny usually goes for fluent in 3 months, working full-time. I'm going to be working half-time, probably about 4 hours a day. And
it's still a lot, I would say, for most people anyway.
So my goal is to reach conversational in 3 months. Right. And I think
that's a new blog. You could have your own blog, conversational.
That's my goal. And I think Brandon has a different goal for his language. And that's something else we want to show the readers, is that they don't have to have a fluent in 3 months goal. Yeah. They can have a whatever.
I know that's been talked about a lot.
Yeah.
And I know your position on it, and I think a lot of people are getting it. But before we end, maybe just give the viewers or the listeners just a hint about not a hint, it's not a secret, but just give them the details of the book tour. You're going to America?
Yeah, so we will be flying into LA in less than a week, and we're doing all 50 states, all Canadian territories and provinces, and we'll be driving the whole thing.
We'll be driving up the
West Coast, and we'll zip across, and then we'll drive all the East Coast, and then that'll be the first part, and then next year we'll do the next part.
Road trip.
The middle, yeah.
Yeah, road trip, exactly.
It'll be summertime in the US. It'll be lovely.
It'll be great. We're using it as as a chance to meet people who may be interested in language learning but not considered it, and I want to give them some encouragement.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and I'm looking forward to seeing you progress, and you, of course, Benny. And as I said, you've been a big inspiration for me getting into this, and it's been a big help, not only sort of language-wise, but also spiritually. So I want to thank you for coming by and taking the time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
No problem.